and deny any wrongdoing. But now, as it'll be months before Diddy gets his day in court, the mogul knows at least 8 people will publicly be on his side: his children and his mother. Let's break this down further with therapist, trauma expert, and author of Stolen Childhoods, Thriving After Abuse, Sherry Botwin. Sherry, it's always so great to see you. A lot of discussion has been kind of surrounding Diddy's children and kind of what they're experiencing as their father still remains behind bars. But what's your reaction to the joint statement that they put out just yesterday?
I wasn't surprised at all. I expected that his children would stand by him. And again, there's so much I don't know or that we don't know about his relationship with his children, but to be able to realize or really understand the charges and the number of people who are saying that he's done these awful things, I think his children, based on what I'm reading in the statement, they're not at a point where they can know or even think that that is something that could be possible. So while it's very sad and I can imagine very complicated, I wasn't surprised.
And does it come to a to you at all that the children released this statement specifically at this point in time? I mean, Diddy was arrested about a month ago, more than a month ago at this point, but then they kind of waited a little bit. We saw that joint statement that they had released about kind of slamming the Kim Porter memoir, which they claim was not done by Kim Porter at all, that being their mother. But is it particularly surprising to you at all that they released this joint statement a month after their father was arrested?
Again, I would say no. I think, as time goes on, it seems as though he is experiencing more and more people coming forward. Basically, it feels like he's just in more and more trouble. So, I was thinking about that and I'm wondering why now? We don't know what he's telling his kids. We don't know what his other supporters are saying, and we don't really know what they're thinking. So, one of the things I was thinking about is, are they like desperate? Are they trying to do anything that they can to try to get him out of prison, at least while the charges are pending? These are the things that happen in these type of cases. Sometimes in the beginning, family members, they sort of stay back because they're told not to say anything. I don't know if Diddy's lawyers had said to them, this is the time that we need and want you to start being more open in the public. There's just so many things that we don't know, but I'm not surprised.
And what are your thoughts on what his children, specifically his daughters, his 4 daughters? We have the youngest one, Love, the twins, Jesse and Delilah, as well as 18-year-old Chance. What are your thoughts on what his daughters could be feeling during this time while their father faces these types of accusations on top of him being in jail, at least for now, for the foreseeable future?
I mean, I imagine that they're feeling scared. They may be horrified at some of the things that they're hearing. And the thing that we have to remember is they're still kids. When you're 17 and 18, you still need your parents. So, I'm thinking to myself, how are they supposed to wrap their head around the idea that their father could be capable of committing such horrific crimes? The other thing that I'm thinking about with them is, what did they think when they saw the video that was released in May with his former girlfriend, Cassie? Like, how was that for them to actually see their father beating on a woman? So I think that what they're feeling at 17 and 18, and the little one is only 2, so I don't think she's thinking anything, but this is going to be one of those cases, I think, where as time goes on and they get older, they may feel differently about their dad than they do right now.
And then some of his children, they did experience great loss. And when I say some of his children, I'm specifically talking about Christian, aka King Combs, Delilah, Jesse, and even Quincy Brown. They lost their mother years ago to pneumonia, and now Diddy is behind bars. What could they be feeling at this time, knowing that right now it seems like they have lost both parents?
Yeah, this is where I would say to people, we really don't want to judge, because unless you've been in a situation where you've already lost a parent and now you feel like you're losing your other parent, I think in general people can't really understand what that would be like. So when there's already one parent gone and then you're risking losing the other parent, then people will do anything they can to hold on to the idea that my parent who is still here is a person that I'm aligned with, that I support no matter what people are saying. If they start to show feelings of disbelief, or if they start to actually listen to some of the charges or the allegations, if they start to allow themselves to think it's possible that my father could have done these things, for them, that would be like losing their other parent.
And, as they continue to put on this united front, do you expect that when it comes time for trial, which is slated for May at this time, do you expect Diddy's children to be called as witnesses in the trial, maybe even as character witnesses?
I mean, I can tell you this from having been involved in other high profile cases. I was at the Cosby trial and he had family members there. I'm working on a case right now, very high profile case against a doctor. There's been over 100 charges against him, and his kids and his wife stand by him. I would expect that they will be called to testify as character witnesses, and this could be one of those things again where we don't know what they're actually thinking. Maybe they'll want to testify for their father. They may feel mixed about it. We don't know what he's telling his children. So at this point, he probably will need them, or at least some of them, to serve as character witnesses, because there's really nobody else that we're hearing from except his family. They're the only ones at this point that are publicly coming out and saying, we support him, we stand by him. They're saying, we love you, we miss you. So for his lawyer to call them to the stand, it would make sense, because they clearly see their dad very differently than others do.
And Diddy's adult sons have appeared at all of his court hearings so far. His daughters went to the last court hearing, excluding his youngest daughter, Love, who is just a toddler right now. What could it be like for his children to be listening to all the charges and accusations that he faces? Again, this isn't, like he's in court or anything like that for a DUI, not excusing that or anything, but it's like these are very serious charges: RICO, conspiracy, as well as sex trafficking and transportation to engage in prostitution. What could it be like for them, who, by all accounts, they might believe that he is a great father, a great man, a great person, but then hearing these terrible accusations and these disturbing allegations? What are your thoughts on what it's like for them to kind of be in a courtroom listening to all of this?
I imagine it's devastating. And I can imagine that they have a whole gamut of thoughts and feelings. One second they could think, my dad would never do that. But then as they're sitting in court and hearing things, they could think, oh, it's possible that he did do that, or they could have seen some of what he has done in the past. So this is where, as human beings, our brains are wired in a way that we can let ourselves know the truth about something and then 2 seconds later think, there's no way that my dad would ever do anything like that. And I think the other thing to keep in mind when you're thinking about a predator or someone who's been accused of such horrific crimes, that doesn't mean that there's not another side of this person that could also be caring and compassionate. So it's really very complicated. I can't imagine how they sit in that courtroom and listen to all that. But again, I've seen in other high profile cases where the family members are sitting right behind the defendant and supporting their loved one, even when there's proof. And again, in this particular situation, we know Diddy has a side of him that's very angry. He has a lot of rage. We saw on the video what he did to this woman. So you can't really deny that he doesn't have pathology, but at the same time, they may just find ways to say to themselves, not my dad. My dad would never do anything like that.
And I really cannot not even imagine what they're all kind of going through, especially, my mind always just goes to their daughters in this
Yeah.
particular case. But for Diddy's adult sons, Justin and Christian Combs, they've previously been named in lawsuits alongside their father. What do you make of that, especially as Diddy, may have allegedly roped his sons into his alleged activities and into his world?
This is a conversation I've been having with colleagues, and this is also a conversation I've had with clients who have been in families where there's crime, where there's sexual assault. I don't know what's happening. What was going on behind the scenes in this family? Were his sons also victims? Were his sons made to think or feel that they had to do certain things because their father said that they had to do it? And I think in time we're going to find more out. we don't really know yet. But the other thing to think about is in families, sometimes what happens is that family members, especially sons and fathers, they will align with their father because they don't want to lose their father's love or respect or caring. So until we hear more from them, we may not know, but it's so complicated. And again, what I would say to people is try not to judge the people in his family because you don't know what you would feel if you were in their situation unless you've been through it.
Yeah, and I think sometimes when Diddy's children post on social media, there is kind of this swift backlash a little bit. But in your opinion, what are your thoughts on the joint statements that they have made? Kind of that, this wall of support that they're holding together. Again, this is their father, so I
So,
can completely understand that. But is there any part of you that thinks that this is potentially just a PR move or even a defense strategy to appear supportive of their father, as many of the high profile faces that we've seen that have been kind of connected to Diddy have said absolutely nothing in support of him?
yes, I think absolutely 100% this could be partially a strategy that the defense is using. When family members join together, there's an element of support among the family members. So for one or two of them to come forward, that might be too scary. And the other thing that I'm thinking is in cases like this, what I usually find out later is that there might have been six people that came together and made that statement, but three or four of them will say to me, I didn't really want to do that. I felt like I had to be a part of that joint statement, or I was told that if I don't, X, Y, and Z. So one of the thoughts that I had when I read the statement was, is that actually what all of them are feeling? Or are some of them sitting there going, I wish I wasn't standing here right now and saying this? We don't really know, but I think it's definitely possible that they don't all feel the support that they're conveying in the media.
And you're an expert in trauma. What could the path forward look like for Diddy's children, especially if their father is convicted and or he continues to face the staggering amount of lawsuits that he's facing right now?
I mean, the first word I think of is betrayal trauma, that type of trauma where you have to find a way to come to terms with the idea that, especially if he ends up being found guilty on any of these allegations, like really just sitting there figuring out how to make sense of this person who obviously they have a very close relationship with. What I imagine for the family is that they will, and I don't know if they'll go to therapy, but they certainly will need a lot of support and a lot of time to really figure out first, how do you come to terms with what's already been put out there? Then, if he ends up staying in prison because he's in prison, he's in jail now, what is that going to mean for them in terms of their relationship with their father? I think, again, what's going to happen is they will feel like they lost their father. Even if he's alive and well behind bars, you can't have a normal relationship with a parent when they're not in the public and when they're not out and about living their lives. So I think that there's a long, long road for each of them. And it'll be interesting to see how, sort of like how things evolve with the family members, especially again, the daughters, because they're still kids. The 2-year-old daughter, she's going to find out stuff way after all this is over, but his teenage daughters, they're developing and they're learning and they're going to figure a lot out in the next 5 to 10 years. So I'm hoping that they get support and that they don't feel like they have to do this by themselves, because it is traumatic to go through what they're going through.
And I did want to just throw this question out to you, Sherry, as well, too. What is it like for children whose father was held in such high regard in a way? Like, sure, a lot of people were intimidated by him and his and the power that he had exuded previously. But what is it like for a $1 billion music mogul who was, publicly loved and adored by so many people? Again, I say that kind of loosely a little bit. But what is it like for them to kind of see that decline from him being this enamored figure to kind of being a pariah by all accounts?
It's devastating. That in and of itself is such a big loss for them. And again, we've seen this in other cases: Bill Cosby, Harvey Weinstein, this pediatrician that I'm working on in that case. When somebody has such a high stature in society, or they're so well respected, and then we find out all these other things that apparently allegedly have been going on for decades. It's sort of like when somebody dies suddenly. At first you're just like, wait, what just happened? There's this element of shock and disbelief, and it takes a while to really, wait, this is actually something that could have happened. It did happen. So I think over time, the defenses start to drop, and that's when the real feelings of despair and grief, that's when they really set in. And that's when I think, again, support is so important for people who are going through this. And I don't think we should judge people in that situation. I don't think that we should lash out when they're posting their perspective or their position, because it's what they feel. And I think that we have to give them the time and space to figure out what their opinion is of their father and what to make of all of what's happening.
Well, excellent insight from you, Sherry. I really appreciate your time today. Before we sign you off, is there anything else you'd like to add?
I mean, I would just like to say this is not an uncommon phenomenon. There's a lot of people out here who can relate, even if they don't have high profile parents. There are a lot of people who, as they become adults, find out things about their loved ones or their parents, or find out things that their parents have done to other people. It's devastating, and it's something that we need to keep talking about, because when you think about a case like this, there's so many people who are directly affected, and we're not really talking that much about as kids until, you and I are sitting here now. It's an important topic, and one that I think many people can relate to.
All right, Sherry Botwin, again, thank you so much for your time today. I always appreciate your insight into these cases that we cover.
Thank you so much.
Sean Combs' federal trial is expected